So, welcome everyone to San Francisco Association of Realtors Settlement Changes and Update. This is our interactive training. I am Vanessa Gamp, your president of the association this year, and I'm joined today by the amazing Jay Pepper Martins, the CTO of our MLS. And we are very excited to engage with you guys today to actually answer some real life questions and scenarios. You're going to see first off an overview. So we're going to cover the basics of the rules. We'll give you a couple previews of what the MLS is going to look like after August 12th. And we'll cover like a few real life scenarios. And after we've done that portion, we're going to open it up to questions from all of you. So I do want to give everyone a heads up. We learned this last Friday, the first time that we did this, because there's so many of you. The chat area is going to get very busy. In fact, so busy that there is no possible way that we're going to be able to keep up if you put any questions in there. So if you have a question for us that you would like to be answered, please put that in the Q&A section. That is where we have our MLS team monitoring them, and they'll be able to review those and feed them to us during the Q&A section. If you put your questions in the chat, I'm sorry. We had well over 150 comments. It was just flying. We will miss it. So I don't want to miss any questions. Please use the Q&A section. And without further ado, let's get started.
And we have to start off. Most of our group meetings now, we're going to start off with an antitrust policy statement. I think one of our meeting helpers is going to put the link to this in the chat window for you. And I'll read this aloud. SFAR strives to increase competition in the marketplace and will not be a forum for anti-competitive conduct. The SFAR antitrust policy governs the activities of the association, its member volunteers, and leadership. A copy of the policy linked in the chat window of this webinar, and you can see the link there on the screen. It's in our support centers. You can always go check that out.
Great.
So why do we have these new rules, Vanessa? I know people are probably familiar with it, but maybe we could just review a couple of things. The settlement itself said that we had to have these changes implemented on or before August 17th. Obviously, we've released the rules earlier than that. The changes don't take effect until August the 12th, which is our implementation date. That's when the rules take effect, and the MLS itself, you'll see the interface change a bit, and we're going to show you that today. But the rules were released last week, so you can download them now. And we're going to talk about them today, and you've got this access to a change log that shows you the important contextual changes that you'll be able to refer to. CAR released some forms last week. You may have seen that drop on, I think that was Wednesday, Vanessa? Is that?
Yep.
So CAR has some new forms for you, and we're going to cover a couple of highlights of that today too, but really we'll refer you back to CAR's website for some stuff. So let's talk about commissions for a second. The settlement terms, the MLS settlement terms, say that you can't talk about commissions and compensation in the MLS. But you are still allowed to talk about it. Obviously, you're supposed to negotiate these things with your clients, and you're supposed to talk to other agents about what you're offering and negotiate these things. But it's also important to keep in mind that you may have other settlement terms that you need to adhere to.
Yes. So when you are talking about commissions, you just want to make sure that you're putting this into more like your negotiation part of the process. So certainly what we will be talking about today is what we are enforcing as an association of our MLS. Certainly, if your broker has any recommendations that go above and beyond what our minimum requirements are for the MLS, you are always going to want to default to what your broker says and follow their advice.
That's right. And we won't be providing any specific guidance on language today. We'll just be telling you what is and isn't allowed per the MLS settlement terms. We do know that NAR and CAR are offering some trainings and helping people out with determining some of that language. And of course, as Vanessa said, refer back to your internal broker leadership. Maybe you have someone that does risk assessment or legal internal. You should refer to them because they may be able to help you with additional terms of settlements that you might be responsible for adhering to.
Absolutely.
At the top of the MLS dashboard, there's this banner that's been displaying for a little while. I just want to make sure you haven't sort of lost track of it or forgotten that it's there. It gets updated really regularly whenever there's a new news item that drops or something that's relevant to the settlement. We've been updating this page. It's the NAR settlement page. It's different than the rules changes page that we're going to link to you in a minute. This is the thing that's got sort of as things were happening, what were our reactions to it? So don't forget that you can click on that banner at the top of the MLS dashboard and it'll take you to the sort of the log of the MLS changes of the news as it dropped. So now we're going to look at rules and with a view towards how it changed our system and with a look at what processes may have been altered in the MLS interface. So we're going to jump through it. In the chat window, one of our handy dandy presentation assistants today is going to drop in the change review log. It's a URL that goes to the solution space where it'll show you all of the rules that have been changed specifically for the settlement. The source of the text is not just out of a vacuum. It did come from some specific sources. We looked at the terms of the settlement itself, which was very specific for what MLSs needed to say and not say. And we looked at the NAR and CAR model MLS rules. And we were asked a little bit last week about if the rules are identical across all of the MLSs and across all. Well, in the Bay Area, we're implementing very, very similar language. So it's functionally the same, even if it's not identical word for word language, it's semantically the same. And of course, how does this affect your MLS interface? There's some controls that have been taken out. There's a new optional checkbox that you can use if you want to, and we'll get into some of these examples in a second. But I think, first of all, Vanessa, it might make sense for us to look at the two key rules and talk about those in specific. And again, these should be provided to you in a link in the chat window already. Rule 2.1 is the no offers of compensation information in MLS. This is the unilateral, you can't state offers of compensation offers up front. You can't state disclosed compensation at the end. It's just not supposed to be in the MLS anymore. And the second rule,
one to follow, yes.
it is, yeah. This is really the sort of the key one rule for agents in your day-to-day business. The second one that's got some real teeth here is about outside platforms. The use of MLS data cannot be used to power or establish and maintain essentially a replica for what we used to have in the MLS system, i.e., listings showing all the compensation across all the companies offered unilaterally to all other agents. If we discover that that's happening, we need to take some pretty strong steps, which we'll talk about in a moment. Here's the complete set of changes that link takes you to. It'll highlight all these things. Again, it's not a lot. Most of it you've already sort of figured out. It's, don't put in any compensation offers. Make sure you're using buyer broker agreements. Don't create a replica platforms outside the MLS. Okay. So what actually changed? The compensation fields have been removed. Those are the ones where you used to specify things like a percent offered or the dual variable rate. That's all gone. We've changed the help text around the public and private remarks fields just to be crystal clear. There's a keyword search help feature now that will alert you if you're using language that's not allowed. And then we've got this new checkbox. So this is going to say credits to buyers considered. And Vanessa, we know a little bit about this sort of lining up with a CAR form, I think.
Yes. So the new CAR listing agreement no longer, of course, will have any mention of cooperating compensation in it. But
Right.
there is a new CAR form called the Multiple Listing Service Addendum. And so when you sign a listing agreement, you're going to have this MLS addendum with it. And one of the questions on there is asking the seller if they would consider credits to buyers or buyers' agents. So if your seller is deciding yes, they would consider, they will check that box. So when you go to input your listing in the SFAR MLS, you'll see that box there where it says credits to buyer considered, and you will also check it as yes.
And that checkbox, we're going to show a demo of it here in a moment so people can really see what it looks like. The last thing that we're changing is that a new alert is going to display when you post your listing after you've got all the details figured out and you're getting ready to submit it. It's going to alert you, just reminding you, hey, there's these new rules that are in effect. Some of them refer to the NAR settlement. and there will be a link that takes you to the full rules and the change logs so that you can review them. But I think you'll get used to this after a while. I think the alert will be something we do for the first, maybe for the rest of the year, and that may go away over time. And just a reminder, the MLS is obligated to enforce these rules. We're not trying to do this to you. Really, we're working with you here to make sure we can help you stay in compliance. And we're trying to work together as a community to make sure nobody accidentally does something they shouldn't.
Yes.
Okay.
And all of these rules are going to go into effect on August 12th. But because we have a little bit of a funny window until then, Jay, that very first box where you mentioned compensation is being removed,
Oh, right.
what is happening currently in the MLS right now in case somebody uses that brand new CAR listing agreement where there's no longer cooperating compensation?
Right. It's important we don't forget this. So, because the CAR forms did update last week and the system release isn't until the 12th of August, for now, those compensation fields where it's got that percent and the dual variable rate and the comments, they're still there, but they're no longer required. They used to be mandatory fields because our rules said that it was. Well, the rules are the opposite now. Now it's saying it's not allowed on the 12th. So, until then, the controls are now optional. You can fill them out, so if you're using a listing agreement or you're maybe still using some paperwork that says you want to specify one, you can do that, but you don't have to fill those fields out any further. They're not mandatory. Good catch.
Great.
Beside the two remarks fields, when the new system goes live on the 12th of August, you're going to see that the text has been updated and refreshed a little bit. The important things here are that it says specifically that commission or compensation information is prohibited in public remarks. And in the private remarks section, it also is not permitted there. And there's a warning now at the bottom that says that misuse is prohibited and a link to the rules. And in those rules, it's going to be very clear again, rule 2.1, 2.2, 7.6. There's a bunch of new rules that specifically say you can't mention commission or compensation. And also, we're going to have this word checking help feature. So when you're typing anything in a text field in the MLS, if you use a word that's restricted, the system will highlight that for you and will not let you use it. This will help you stay in compliance and not use words that you're supposed to. And our obligation here, just to remind you, is that we will review and we are obligated to punish with violations in anyone who tries to slip the word in. So maybe if the word checker didn't catch commission because you've cleverly misspelled it or something, and to force it in, that still then becomes a violation. Just because it passed the word checker doesn't mean it's allowed. This is just meant to help you stay in compliance. Right. Okay. So the section of listing input is going to look different. This is the area where your listing price, your on market date information, the listing period. This used to have all of the compensation and cooperation information in it for offers. And now instead, it will just have this one checkbox that says credits to buyers considered, and it will not be checked by default. It will be blank, and you will choose to check it or not based on whatever paperwork you got through listing. So someone asked us last week, what are we going to do for the night when we roll over? If people had data in there already for compensation, what happens with the checkbox?
That is a really good question. So if you had a listing that is live in the MLS on August 11th, and you had a listing agreement where the seller was, of course, willing to offer compensation, when the system automatically changes over on August 12th, we are going to assume that if the seller on the 11th was offering compensation, that they would be open to considering buyer credits on the 12th. And so all of those listings, we will automatically convert to having that box checked as yes. But certainly, you are the listing agent. We very much encourage you to take a look and make sure that what is represented on the MLS is what you and your seller have agreed to.
There's also going to be some removal of words. So just like the keyword checker is going to make sure that you can't accidentally use a word, some words are just going to be deleted from our system on that night too. So what you really need to do on the 12th is, regardless of what you think the system might or might not do automatically, If you have listings, you must go in on the 12th and look through your listing and make sure everything still makes sense. So, like we say, words will be removed from some of the comment fields. A checkbox may or may not have been checked depending on what you had in there because those controls are now optional. So make sure you go in on the 12th and make sure your listings are accurate to what your agreements say and your paperwork says, and make sure that it's in compliance with your broker's terms of any settlements that they've had to negotiate with plaintiffs also. We're just showing you what the MLS system will allow you to do when the new changes take effect. But always refer back to your own internal counsel with your. The last thing that's going to change is this confirmation dialog. When you submit your listing, it's going to stop you for a second and make you confirm that you're aware that the rules have been changed. There will be a link here that will take you to the rules. What exactly we're going to say in this dialogue, we're still finessing a little bit, but the gist of it will be, please make sure you're following the new.
So what I really love about all of these steps, all of these pop-ups, all of this information, if you guys haven't figured it out yet, it's that SFAR, we are trying so hard to help you remain compliant. We don't want any accidents. We don't want any oops. Obviously, you guys are taking time out of your busy schedule to learn all of the new rules. And so we're very excited that you're doing so. But if someone was not as aware of what was happening, we are on your team. We are trying to put in a lot of stops to try and prevent you from accidentally breaking any rules. So big kudos to you and the MLS team for figuring all of that out, Jay.
Oh, well, we've had a lot of help from leadership. I mean, your board of directors has been extremely active this year in making sure we get this thing as close to perfect as possible and made it possible for us to get the rules published last week on July 22nd. And just remember that the effective date is August 12th. Even if you see something that says the 17th, I mean, I think that the reason that landed on a Saturday had to do with somebody counted exactly 90 days out from some court order, is why that landed on a Saturday. But the MLSs in the Bay Area are all going to try to release on the 12th. And we want to do that so that we have full staff available to help you with emails and calls that first week if you encounter something unexpected. We're not going to have that just sort of happen to you on a Saturday. We will be here to support you and back you up.
Great.
So we've got some fun scenarios to go through now, and I think if we set it up correctly, we're even going to get to do this with some Q&A polls where you're going to be interactively prompted to answer some of these questions. We're going to pitch some scenarios at you, and we're going to talk about what is and isn't allowed under the new rules. Hopefully you've had a chance to sort of hear what we're saying, and you'll have a good intuition here on what comes next. How about we do this?
I'm excited.
Okay.
You guys are lucky. It's the first time we're doing the poll version.
Right. Okay, so Vanessa, you accidentally put an offer of compensation in your listing posted in the MLS. Do you think this is allowed, not allowed, or questionable? And I'm going to pull up the Zoom widget and I'm going to launch the poll and we'll see how we do.
I feel like we need some Jeopardy music here.
And we'll give everyone a second here. Let's launch this poll. Okay, so right now, can everyone see a poll on their screen?
Yes.
Oh, I'm seeing responses so people can see it.
Perfect.
Okay,
so I have my guess.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that no, this is definitely not allowed.
Okay, so I see that we're starting to trail off now for the poll, and we'll end the poll now, and we'll share the results on the screen. Hopefully everyone gets to see this. Can you guys see the results?
Most of you got this correct.
I have a funny feeling.
There's 5 of you just being comical there. But if not,
looks like that's cheeky.
Yes.
Good job. Okay, so let's talk about it a little bit. Obviously, to stay in compliance, we have to make sure you don't put compensation or commission in the MLS. But if someone accidentally did, we are going to take some steps. We're going to email you, tell you that it happened. We'll give you exactly one warning ever, not one warning per listing, not one warning per quarter. You will get one verbal and email warning about this that's also CC'd to your broker and sales manager, and that'll be the last warning you get. On a second offense, it jumps immediately to fine level E. That's our biggest fine level, and it's $5,000. And your access will be suspended until you pay it. If it happens again, it'll be double the fine and a mandatory 30-day suspension. And at the end of that 30-day suspension, if you still haven't paid the $10,000 fine, you'll continue to be suspended until you have fully paid the fine. And of course, subsequent offenses mean we have to really talk to you and talk to your broker.
So I have a couple of questions based on the slide, Jay.
Sure.
So the first off, this is very new for us. I don't think you've done this before. You're going to be emailing my broker or my sales manager if I break a rule. Are you
Right.
just trying to get me in extra trouble?
No, definitely not. What we're trying to do here is, people go on vacations or they have out of office or they get really busy. What we're hoping to do is if we let everyone know, you and your broker manager, that if you're unavailable out of the office, your broker can still go in and remove whatever the offending information is that's not allowed and get it back in compliance. And honestly, we hope it's a teaching opportunity where if the broker knows that maybe a couple of agents sort of haven't gotten the message yet, it'll give an opening to having that dialogue internally so that we can just get everyone up to speed. We, again, just want to make sure everyone's following all of the rules and collaborating.
Okay, that is great. I'm glad we're not just throwing me under the bus for an accident there.
Definitely not.
My next question is, fine level E is our most egregious fine level. And I'm not even sure if I've seen before suspension of access. These are some really steep fines if rules are being broken. Are you just out to make a buck off of me?
Definitely not. The reason why the fines are so steep and the egregious sort of level of response here is to keep everyone in compliance because if it happens a lot, if it happens many times, and the MLS is viewed as going soft on this and not enforcing what the plaintiffs have negotiated, then we could end up back in court. And that means trouble for all of us. It means the MLS goes back. It means you as brokerages become exposed right down to the agent level. So by being really, really steep on the front edge of this, we can demonstrate that we're taking it super seriously. And that will prevent us from all ending up in a lot of hot water altogether, which we're trying to avoid at all costs.
Well, that's good because I am definitely not interested in traveling to Missouri
Yeah,
for
which is
any
where we would have to go.
Missouri courts for any
Yeah,
reason.
we don't want to go there. Okay, next question. Potential buyer walks into your open house. Okay, you're unsure if they have an agent with a buyer broker agreement. And when you ask if they have an agreement, they say no or they're unsure. Can you still show the home to this potential buyer as the listing agent? Okay, we
Ooh.
need some music for this one, don't we?
So this is a little tricky. I have to
Yeah.
think about this for a second. I have an answer.
Okay, I'm going to launch the poll here for open houses. Let's see what our respondents think. Can they show the home to the potential buyer?
All right. So I'm going to say that this is questionable. So I'm going to go with the yes, but option.
Yes, but okay, yeah. So we're going to let our members chime in here. We've got, over 200 people have already answered. So let's end the poll and show those results. And as you guessed, it is questionable, requires some context. It's a yes, but. And so, how does that actually shake in? This is an area where I'm glad you're on the horn here with us, Vanessa, because you're going to actually understand what this experience is like when you're in it. But from what I understand, is CAR is providing some kind of an optional mechanism of some kind that you can use, but maybe you could better explain it than.
Yeah. So the key with this scenario of hosting an open house, NAR has made it very clear that open houses, public open houses, is the one showing opportunity where no buyer broker agreements need to be signed. So you can, as a listing agent or a showing agent, host an open house to the public and show people the property so long as you are acting on behalf of the seller. So showing the house, answering questions about the property itself, all of that on behalf of the seller is no problem. Where this might change, so where the context comes in, is if you're hosting this open house and at the same time as representing the seller, you're hoping to convert some of the people who are viewing the property into potential buyer clients, that's when you might need to have some additional paperwork signed. So
Okay.
if that is the case, there are two forms that you can use. There's both a buyer broker agreement, which we are all familiar with. The new updated version is now settlement compliant. And so that would be a binding contract between you and your client expressing exactly how you'll be paid. There's a new form that SFAR has done. So this is the property showing and representation agreement. So this is actually specially created to be a non-exclusive agreement so that you can show the property to somebody. There's a maximum on the form of 3 property addresses. This is meant to be like a short-term temporary solution for someone who's not ready to sign a buyer broker agreement yet. And this form only lasts for 30 days. So if somebody is interested in something a little further than just seeing this property, this might be the perfect form if they're not ready to commit yet. And the other thing that has been happening, SFAR has created a handy-dandy sign-in sheet for open houses. Now, this is not required by the settlement, but SFAR is absolutely saying that this would be best practice. So if you would like to use this sign-in sheet, you can find it in whatever your forms database that you are using. And basically what the sign-in sheet does is it just affirms that you are there acting on behalf of the seller in a listing agent or showing agent capacity, and you're not acting on behalf of the buyers who are walking into the property.
Okay, that's cool. I think I got it. So let me just make sure I did get it 100%. So I show up at your open house, you're representing your listing agent, and I say, hey, can you show me around the house? So we still were good. But then
Mhm.
at the end, or maybe halfway through, I say, you know what? This house is really great, Vanessa, but it's got 1 fewer bedrooms than I need. This is only a 2 bedroom, and this would be perfect, but I need it in a 3 bedroom. Can you show me any other homes that are basically like this, but meet my needs better? Is that when I've become, at that point, I'm asking you to change your role?
Correct. So at that point, it's time to have some sort of discussion where you are interacting with the buyer and deciding how you would like to move forward in a professional relationship and possibly sign a contract on how you would be compensated for assisting them.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. Thanks for walking me through that because that's what that one's been confusing me a little bit. Okay, we've got another question here. This one is I put a document with an offer of compensation in my disclosure package, which I then host on a product like Disclosures.io, which is linked in the MLS. Is it okay to have that in the MLS with that disclosure link where I've stated my compensation? What do you think?
Ooh, this is a tricky one that I'm going to have to think through. I do love the ease of Disclosures.io.
Mhm.
And I do love that every single listing in the MLS automatically has that link there.
Yep, they do.
But if it's in the MLS and I've got, okay, I think I've got my answer.
Okay. Okay. Vanessa's
Uh,
got her answer. She's going to lock it in. Let's see what
mhm.
people think. Get the question open and 150, 170, almost to 200. Okay. We've got lots of responses in again. Let's end the poll and show the results. And you are correct, Vanessa. In this case, what is your answer?
Oh, I guess no. I think because it's in the MLS, I have to say no.
That's right. So again, this is that weird rule about direct or indirect linking, even though it might be in a disclosure package, which is kind of at arm's length from the MLS. It is linked directly from the MLS, which does create that link. So right now at launch on the 12th, we're advising not to include offers of compensation inside your disclosure package, especially if it's disclosures.io, because then it's creating that de facto link. So what we're obligated to do is if we do discover those offers, we are obligated to treat it like it would be if you had put compensation offers right in the comments. So just a little pro tip here. If you're going to use a product like that, you might need a clean and one that you could use in the MLS. Like how would that work, Vanessa, having 2 versions? Is there any other cases where you do that?
Yeah. So we've had people ask about, say, putting offers of compensation on an open house flyer. So if you wanted to do that, that does not go against our MLS rules. That is something that's allowed. The problem is if you then use Disclosures.io, That is directly linked in our MLS, and that's where the violation occurs. So similar to many of us who do floor plans for listings, we'll have two versions. We'll have a branded and an unbranded version. And some of those you can use in person at your properties for opens, and then a different version for the MLS. If you're going to be offering compensation on your open house flyers, we would recommend that you do the same practice here. So maybe a clean version, if you're going to be using disclosures IO, where no compensation is mentioned, but the paper version that you have in your open house might have it listed there.
Awesome. Super helpful. Okay, we got one more to go. I think we have two more to go. Okay, next question number 4. I post my offer of compensation on an external portal, XYZ portal or website, where other agents are also posting their offers of compensation. This would be agents from multiple companies. Are you okay to do that, Vanessa?
Well, I would say that sounds very convenient,
Very.
but I'm not entirely sure if I could do this one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
have
open up the
my
poll here.
answer ready.
Okay. We're over almost 100 answers, and we're going to get back to 200, and then we'll show.
So my guess, if we're ready, my
Almost. We're
guess,
90. We're almost there. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead with your guess, Vanessa.
my guess is that no, I'm not allowed to do that.
Right. And this one again requires us to really talk about it a little bit. It's not allowed, but why? So, external portals that are trying to create a de facto replication of the functionality that used to exist in the MLS are considered a breach of the terms of the settlement. So, that's why the MLS isn't allowed to send data feeds to any portals or websites that do this. But other ones may exist, and some of them are probably actively advertising. And you can see here that members are a little confused. If you look at the results, you can see that most members know that this isn't allowed if it's a cross company portal, something outside the MLS. But a few maybe may have thought that it would be okay. So let's just remind everyone that just because the MLS isn't governing portal XYZ, it doesn't mean that it's allowed. It just means that we wouldn't be the ones coming to you to give you the really bad news if you're discovered sort of doing that kind
Correct. Yeah. So we definitely are going to do all of the enforcing that we can for our own MLS. But you, as members, need to remember that you are all part of the settlement and you have agreed to abide by the rules. And there are times when you yourself will have to police yourself out there on the wild of the
of. Yeah.
internet.
And remember, your brokerage may have negotiated additional terms of the settlement that say things like you cannot do exactly what this is elaborating on. So you might be okay or not being under the MLS's rules for that, but your brokerage is going to have some rules it's got to follow too. Okay, we do have one more. Let's do it. You have a single property website that you're maintaining, and it has your listing visible to the public. Anyone can go to it. Could you potentially put an offer of compensation on a single property website just for your own listing?
Ah, okay. So this is something else that would sound really convenient.
Right.
I often have a 123mainstreet.com website,
Hmm.
and I am always using an IDX feed from the MLS when I do that website. So I definitely want to follow the rules. I think I have my answer ready.
Okay, we're almost to 170, 180, getting pretty
You
close.
really want
So
full participation.
I really do. And I think these are the ones that are a little bit gray area where people aren't sure yet, right? So I think it's really valuable for us to get, there we go, there's 200. Okay, I'm going to share those results. And you can see that again, some people see
Ooh.
that that's allowed and that's okay. And let's really dig into what's going on with this one too, Vanessa. Why is it allowed if it's only my listing?
Yeah, so I think the key to this is that it's not in the MLS. So if it is at 123mainstreet.com, that is an allowed place if you wanted to disclose that you were offering compensation or buyer credits. However, if I then say, for more information, go to 123mainstreet.com in the private remarks of the MLS,
Right.
Then I've officially linked it, and then I am breaking the rules. So as long as I'm not putting that private website or even my brokerage's website into the private remarks, then those external websites themselves are allowed to have compensation information for one agent or one brokerage without breaking any rules.
That's right. The trick here, according to the MLS settlement rules, is we can't help you build portals that combine multiple companies. It's the cross company boundary that's really what's important. If Vanessa and a team, they're all working for one company, they have 3 or 4 active listings, and they're showing compensation for those on their own website only, and there are no links to that website from the MLS, that's okay. They're doing their own business. The MLS rules just say we can't provide data feeds to portals or products that are crossing the multiple office boundary. Again, we're going to refer you back to your individual brokerage settlement terms to make sure you're not wandering into something that may violate your brokerage's agreements. Okay, I think everyone did pretty good there. Let's do some quick shotgun ones. We'll go through a quick list here, but again, we're going to draw your attention to this middle statement. These are example cases for what is and is not allowed under the terms of the settlement with MLSs. So some of the things that the MLS says yes here, you still may need to refer back to your own brokerage's legal or settlement terms in order to get. Let's take a look at these. Let's go by the one by one. Can I put offers of compensation on open house flyers? According to the MLS terms, yes.
And can I make offers of compensation on the phone? Also, according to the MLS, yes, text message, phone call, all of that's okay.
Yes. Email blasts are also permitted as long as you use language like it's negotiable, because these things are all negotiable now. The Gibbs has a clause in it that reminds you that, hey, all of these things are negotiable. At the very end of the Gibbs, it reminds you again. So just if you're going to put an email blast with an offer in it, just make sure that, this is what you're offering, but it's totally negotiable.
Am I required to have a sign-in sheet at my open house? No, according to our rules, but CAR is definitely recommending it as best practice.
And also for the are you required to have buyer broker agreements? No, but remember that one caveat that we explored, which is if I start asking questions about can Vanessa show me other houses, now she's going to represent me as a buyer, and they've got to get some paper in place for that.
Right. Can I work in general with buyers without having buyer broker agreements signed with them? That's an easy no.
Right on. What about offers of compensation on social media sites? So this is an area we didn't have in our example scenarios, but we're just going to advise caution here. We know agents participate in private Facebook groups or other social media portals where it's maybe a few of them collaborating. Just be really careful. If you're making unilateral offers in private groups, that sounds like what they don't want you to do. So you're going to be on your own on these kinds of things. We're not going to police Facebook, but our recommendation there is be extremely careful with what you're doing.
Yes. So something on your own page, you're probably going to be safe there because you are only showing your own listing and advertising compensation. But you don't want to get a call from the Missouri court system because you were posting something in a Facebook group where multiple people were also showing.
Yeah, because then you get to go to court, they get to go to court, we all get to go to court.
The bad day.
What about offers of compensation in your off MLS disclosure package? So we talked about this quite a bit, and our advice here was again, be careful. Putting it in disclosures I is a bad plan. It's linked in the MLS. But if it's a clean one that's only being sent separately, or you're maybe doing a print copy, just be careful with what you're doing.
Yeah. And I know that not everybody uses Disclosures.io. So if you are using a different source, say you're using Google Drive or Dropbox or any similar type of product, all of that is completely fine, so much as you don't put the link to that in the MLS. So if you host your disclosure packages all in Google Drive, for example, you can put that same flyer into it. You just cannot put the link to the Google Drive in the MLS. Agents will have to reach out you directly for a disclosure package.
And just like that, can I hide compensation offers in a text field? A month or so ago, we saw people saying they had seen some pretty crazy ideas. I heard one person even trying to slip it into the back of the price, things like that. So just remember that you can't put offers, you can't put them in text fields, driving directions, anything like that. and we're obligated to scan for these.
Can my brokerage's website show all of the listings for our company with offers of compensation? And the answer to that is yes. If they want to do that, they're absolutely allowed to do so. You just cannot add the link to your brokerage website anywhere in the MLS if that is the case.
Right on. Can my brokerage website show the compensation offered by the other brokerages that are maybe operating in your MLS or in your area? And no, this is that case we were talking about where it's a portal you're creating. It's a de facto replication of what's been sort of removed, and so you're not allowed to do that.
Can I post an offer of compensation at my open house? According to our SFAR MLS rules, yes, that is a place that you can share that information.
And you could even create QR codes that maybe go to your single property website or anywhere else where you want to offer a compensation offer on one listing. But again, do not link anything like that in the MLS. Don't put the QR code in a disclosure package in disclosures IO that's linked, because that's going to create that link again. And then we have to treat that just like you'd tried to put the number in. So again, be very careful when you're using it, but you can, of course, make QR codes that you display at your open house or anywhere you want.
And then this is a good one here because we haven't quite talked about it yet. But can I put the negotiated commission in the comments of my listing when it is closed as a sold? So this is actually a no. I know that we are used to closing out a listing and adding any notes in there if there were any additional credits given. Now, we can still put if there were any concessions, but it has to be a total number. So you can't say 10,000 went to replacing the roof and X amount went to buyer agent credits. That will get you in hot water really quickly. So if there was any concessions, no matter what the concessions were, you just put the total in there, but no details.
And let's go back and take a look again at what forms CAR. Let's highlight a couple of the important forms that were released last week. We talked about the open house visitor non-agency disclosure sign-in. That's that optional sheet for open houses.
Yep. And then we have the property showing and representation agreement. So this is the new form that is not binding. It's a non-exclusive relationship that will allow you to show property up to 3 for 30 days so that a potential buyer can try you out as an agent.
Gotcha. And then the multiple listing service addendum, that's what you'll attach to listing agreements going forward, if I understand that right.
Yes. So this is the one that's really helpful, and I'm very excited that our MLS adopted something almost identical to the CAR forms. So if that box is checked, yes, your seller does want to consider possible buyer credits, then when you enter the listing in the MLS, you'll check the yes box for us as well.
Gotcha. And then the, of course, buyer representation and broker compensation agreement, that's the actual full buyer broker agreement, right? It's a bit longer.
Correct. So this is a standard form that we've had for a long time. There has been updates and changes to make it compliant with the settlement, but this is that binding contract that we all need as buyer's agents now in order to show property and work on behalf of any buyers.
And that form, it says here that that form started in December of 2022. So it has been around for quite a while.
Yes, CAR has definitely wanted us to use these agreements for a while, but now we all have to. So
Right on. Okay, so just a note about some support resources, and then we'll jump to some questions and stuff here. So the teams are being cross-trained so that membership and MLS will be able to help you with any issues that arise out of this. We've been doing trainings internally at the office. Everyone's been very engaged. We're going to try to staff this first Saturday and Sunday that we release these changes on the 12th. That'll be the day of the settlement global enforcement is Saturday the 17th. So we're going to try to be available from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on that Saturday and that Sunday. And the other thing that we want to make sure you know is this has been a challenge. We've had to change rules and forms and procedures and the MLS. And we acknowledge that something might be done in a way that is not perfect, or might see another example of someone doing it out east or maybe north of us. And it's a better way to do things. So we're going to closely monitor things and we'll make adjustments.
yes. So I'm so glad that you brought this up. For many of you, you might not have actually read the very dense settlement paperwork, but when you go to read the appendix where it specifically calls out what the rules and the regulations are, they are very clear on some big topics and very vague on a lot of details. And so a huge part of what we've taken on as our responsibility at the association level is making sure that we are interpreting to the best of our ability what the intent of the settlement is so that we can prove that we are in fact acting in good faith and following the settlement rules. So we have contacted our own outside counsel, our own antitrust attorneys. We've been in lots of conversation at exec and the board level to make sure that we are protecting our association as best as we can and following these settlement rules. And we've created them to the best of our ability. However, it is possible that things may change in the future. If we start to notice that other associations are getting in trouble for doing X, and we also have this rule, do not worry. We will be monitoring that closely and we will pivot quickly to protect the association to make sure that we're doing that. Likewise, if we see that we have been preventing something that is now in the future, months or years being deemed as acceptable, we can also change some of our restrictions. So rest assured that all of us at leadership are taking really close attention, paying really close attention to what is happening out there, so that we can keep everyone working without interruption to your business workflow as much as possible.
Awesome. Well put. So just a reminder that CAR is offering some classes on how to use those buyer broker agreements. If you scan the QR code right now, if you haven't already signed up for this, when you get to the site, it's free. There's going to be a thing where it says like 50% off or something. There's a code right on there that you can enter. And maybe you even know it, Vanessa. I should have updated the slide. I'm sorry.
It's okay, yes. So the trick is when you get to the website, it'll ask you for a coupon code. You're going to put in forms 49.
Coupon code. That's what it is.
Yes. So it's Forms 49 will get you these classes for free. These are self-led, available online 24/7. So if you're unable to take any of the in-person CAR classes, you can do this at 2 in the morning if that's when you wish to take these classes.
Awesome. Okay, that's our last slide. I know that RJ's been manning some of the question and answer block. He's probably resolved some of them that we answered in line. But how about we'll stop now and I'll jump to any slides as we need, but let's take some of the Q&A, RJ. Can you start feeding us a couple of questions?
Sure thing. Let me go up here. Pardon me. Folks have been very, very active in the Q&A, and that's great to see.
That
That's
is good, yes.
why we love having folks attend these sessions. Let's see. One question. If my seller is willing to compensate buyer's agent, what's better to put in the listing agreement? The listing agent will share their portion with buyer's agent, or the seller will credit back buyer, and buyer will pay their agent.
Great.
I'll
So
throw this one to you, Vanessa.
yeah, so in this instance, what you're going to use is the MLS addendum. So I, of course, am not an attorney, nor am I your broker, but I'm pretty sure that if you were to ask your broker or your risk management attorney, they would have the same answer, that you would not be writing any shared compensation into your listing agreement, but you would instead use the MLS addendum and just check the box that the seller will consider certain credits.
All right, thank you. Next up, how will the MLS monitor and distinguish between sold properties with and without compensation/concessions for comparable purposes?
Yeah, we've heard this one quite a bit. The long and the short answer is we aren't and we won't. And that's going to be one of the things that people are going to have to figure out. I think that when you had groups of people that were negotiating terms of a settlement in a room in April, they may not have been thinking about some of the downstream effects. So this is one of the things where we're going to see how it's going to shake out, but the MLS will not be monitoring which ones do and don't, and we won't be producing reports on this. And it will actually be illegal to, as the MLS, have the compensation information extracted and then produce a report on that, because that would be de facto recreating the how much compensation was offered on every listing. So the MLS will not be monitoring and won't be doing any reporting on that.
So Jay, does that mean that the historical data is going to go away as well?
That's a really great question, a good follow-up. So what we're obligated to do is remove it from all reports, displays, interfaces, and forms that are in the MLS or any reports that come out of it. That includes data feeds, exports, everything. So you will not find the compensation information, even for historical listings, available anywhere now. But the data may exist in a database backup, and should that data be required in the future, it will be technically still in a database, but it will not be shown. And it's still historically true for the period up until, I guess, the 11th is the last day that that data might exist. But it will not be visible to staff either, which means that we won't be able to, if you call us, we won't be able to run a report for you or figure anything out like that, even on historical data. That data will just not be sort of part of the MLS's system.
And this is a nationwide requirement. So as frustrating as it is for all of us as agents and certainly for appraisers, everyone will be in the same boat no matter where it is they are transacting real estate in the US.
Another one for unintended downstream consequences. The city requires BMR listings to have commission posted publicly. What plan is there to comply with the city?
Yes, so we are talking to the Mayor's Office of Housing Department because no agent will be able to do that and remain compliant. So they are already aware of the settlement. If you are an agent that works with the Mayor's Office of Housing, you know that they are actually reviewing a lot of their policies and guidelines for many of their programs right now. So we've already made them aware that that information is automatically going to be removed. In order for us as an association to not be in violation of the settlement, we cannot have that wording that the Mayor's Office of Housing gives you in the MLS. So it will automatically be removed from our systems, or you cannot put it in for any new listings after August 12th.
Thank you. A form question here. What is the name of the addendum with the listing agreement to agree on buyer agent compensation?
That is, so the buyer broker agreement is what you're going to use. I think the question is the SFAR form that would, my guess is they're asking, what is the SFAR form that takes the responsibility of who pays the agreed upon commission in the buyer broker agreement to move the obligation from the buyers to the seller when you do the listing. Jay, do you remember the name of that addendum in the SFAR forms?
I think it's the BBAPA. Does that sound right? Buyer broker addendum something. Is that right?
Buyer broker purchase addendum. You are correct. Good
Yay!
job with
Okay,
your
cool.
memory. That was a live pop quiz there for you.
Woo, I passed.
That form still exists. We released that form several months ago in San Francisco. It works identically to how the new CAR purchase agreement, they have a checkbox in there if you want to transfer the responsibility from the buyers paying the commission to the seller paying the commission. So in San Francisco, you can just use the San Francisco buyer broker purchase agreement addendum, and it would transfer the responsibility when you submit your offer. If the sellers agree to accept it, it transfers the responsibility from the buyer to pay the commission for the sellers to pay commission.
Cool. I see a question here, RJ, that I'm going to field.
Go for it.
It's about NAR. So the question is along the lines of why can't we separate ourselves from NAR? And that's an interesting question, but it's actually kind of irrelevant, and I'll explain. There are many MLSs across the country that, facing legal repercussions of their own independent from NAR, signed on to the terms of the settlement. And some of them had to do that at cost. Some of them did that at their own negotiating terms. So whether or not we are or are not a member of NAR doesn't remove our obligation to participate in the terms of the settlement. What would potentially happen if we weren't part of NAR is we'd be looking at how would we be settling directly with plaintiffs' attorneys, which could cost more, cost less, be more complicated, have additional requirements to the terms. So I understand why the question is asked, but it's actually not relevant. We as an industry are transforming, and there is no corner to hide in. There's no escape.
Thank you, Jay. We have a what if question here. What if I don't have a buyer and I come upon a listing not an open house? The property is on lockbox. Am I allowed to enter the property without a signed buyer rep agreement?
That's a good question. So these are not buyer representation agreements are not going to be used like say PEDs were back during the lockdown. So you don't need a signed buyer broker agreement to enter a property. You need a signed buyer broker agreement to show property to buyers. So if you just an agent want to go see property, no changes to your business practice. You just have to follow whatever rules the listing agent has in order for you to get access.
Thank you. I'm going to summarize a bunch of questions here that fall, I think, under two broad categories.
Okay.
One is, what sort of language can I use in private remarks to let agents know they should contact me about disclosures, because that is where I'm parking my commission information. And the other one is, what is the boundary of whose website I can publicize commissions on?
Great. I'll take the first one. So you can always tell someone that disclosure packages will be available by request only in the private remarks, but full stop. I mean, don't try to work in language. Like, this is where I think some agents are sometimes getting the intent of the settlement wrong. It's not that we have to make sure we don't use the real words commission and compensation, but you can encode it somehow. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is the industry is transforming, and that's no longer the right place to have those conversations. And any attempt to try to work it back into that system is going to create problems. And if it doesn't create problems just for you, it'll create them for you and your broker. And if it doesn't stop there, it'll create problems for you, your broker, and the MLS, and then all of us. So again, you can always put a comment in your private remarks saying you need to contact me privately for the disclosure package, but stop there. Stop. That's enough.
And
What was the
if
second part?
your seller has checked the box that they would consider concessions, the way that you would signal to potential buyer agents that this might be up for negotiation when they write their offer is by checking the yes box in the MLS.
Right. And again, the differentiation there is really critical. It's we would negotiate, considered, not guaranteed. It's not just a de facto representation of something that's no longer allowed. It's hey, we would negotiate.
Thank you. Shall we continue with more questions? I noticed we're already
Yeah.
past 3 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah, let's take one more and let's try to wrap it up with a nice
Okay.
segment.
Well, let me see if I can find a good one here for you. Here's one I haven't seen before. If a seller says they're open to concessions, can they change their mind if an offer otherwise doesn't meet their expectations?
Absolutely. That is exactly what negotiating is all about. So being open to concessions does not require the seller to decide that they're going to take over the responsibility of paying for the buyer's agent's commission. So being open to concessions means if you're going to submit an offer, you can put concessions in there. I may or may not accept them. Great question.
And I actually think I know the last thing that we're going to say before we sign off. There are some questions that I saw in the chat window, some ideas like, why can't we remove things from the MLS or add things to the MLS? And the answer is we definitely can, and we definitely will or won't, depending on how we see things shake out. So we're all entering a fairly interesting new territory here. It's going to take a little while for us to get our bearings, but you can rest assured that if we discover that a common practice is something that is easily enabled by us removing a button from the MLS, that will be the action that we take. But we're not going to start there. We're going to start with following the rules. And we're going to start with implementing changes that make sense, that are simple, and we're going to monitor things as we go. And the Vanessa and the leadership team has been fantastic, highly communicative, and deeply engaged. And we're going to make adjustments on the fly if we have to.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys all so much for coming today. I know we're a couple minutes past the hour. Thanks for hanging in there. I still see the attendee number is really high. That's a great sign. It's been really great. Getting a chance to tell you about all these changes. We're all going to have to work together here on this. Vanessa, any final remarks?
Yeah, I just want to say, we're trying really hard to work collaboratively with everyone. Hopefully you guys get the feeling that we totally have your backs. It's happening to all of us. So we're all in this together. Please know that we are using all of the questions that are coming in today and the ones from our session last week on Friday. We will be answering all of those questions, even if we didn't get to it in the webinar. And we're going to be compiling an FAQ sheet that we can send out to all of you. So this is not the end of the communication from us. This is not the end of training from us. We will continue to try and share things that will be helpful for all of you. Please remember, if you see my talking face on the MLS, unmute it. I'm probably saying something important, trying to keep you all out of trouble. So I really appreciate how engaged everyone is. I know how stressful this is for all of us. Believe me, SFAR and myself included. So just a friendly reminder for all of you to take a deep breath, stay calm, and sail on.
Right on. Take care, everybody.